Hi, it is Wednesday evening, November 19th, 2025, and I want to talk about a stunning news item that I think none of you have heard of, but no, I'm just kidding. There's a research report has just come out that there is snow in the Arctic. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody knows there's snow in the Arctic, but not everybody knows that there is corruption in Ukraine. And of course, I've known about corruption in Ukraine for a very long time because I've been quite familiar with this Ukraine situation as it's developed since it first came to my attention in 2013. So so I want to talk about this topic and specifically also the relation of the media to it and why it was why it comes as such a shock to people when it's been quite obvious for a very long time. So I'm going to start off with a quote by Malcolm X, who was the famous Black Power civil rights leader who was assassinated. I think it was in 1964, and he was an amazingly insightful person, and he said the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And I've got this clip here, which I'm going to.
In World War II, this country could use its news media to propagandize and make the whole American public love the Germans and the Japanese, rather love the Russians and the Chinese, and hate the Germans and the Japanese. And then after the war, they changed it and made the American public love the Germans and love the Japanese, hate the Russians and hate the Chinese, which shows that they can make.
So that was an interesting example, where Malcolm X says that during World War II, Russia and China were our allies. Absolutely, they were our allies. There were a couple of videos that you can see on YouTube. One of them is called The Battle for Russia, and the other one is called The Battle for China, and it's portraying both those countries as our allies. And yet, as soon as the war was over, and the Soviet Union, in its communist government, was still the same government, and the Chinese, the nationalists lost to Mao Zedong and the communists. Suddenly, they became the arch enemies, and the public, within like a couple of years, the public had completely changed their mind. So I bring this up because we have the situation where the the government has decided that they want to bring this issue of Ukrainian corruption to our attention, and I want to point out first of all that this phenomenon is known as manufacturing consent, which was a book that was written in the late 1980s, I think 1988 or 89, by the famous philosopher and linguist Noam Chomsky and his collaborator, who's also a professor named Ed Herman. They wrote this book called Manufacturing Consent. And the point is that the media basically acts to, what can I say, railroad or brainwash or manufacture consent for whatever the government wants us to think. And the idea that the media is independent of the government is it's a fantasy. It's not true. There's some articles that I want to refer to, and one of them, the first one this is from the Libertarian Institute, and the Democrats attack the Ukraine audit resolution as divisive and ill-advised. So let me refer to this article here. This article was written on April 26, 2023. So here's the situation. We have the fact that the United States and the CIA specifically had been manipulating Ukrainian public opinion for decades. In fact, Victoria Nuland even bragged about it, saying that they had spent $5 billion building democracy, which is known as meddling in Ukraine's internal affairs, to get them to to believe that Russia was not their friend, and that Ukraine and that the United States is their friend. And now that Ukraine has lost, a million or a couple of million people, its population has dropped by half because, several millions of maybe 10 to 20 million people have left Ukraine because the situation is so untenable there. And yet the U.S. government would have you believe that we are the friend of Ukraine, and Russia is not the friend of Ukraine. So there's that. And so this article it talked about Representative Matt Gaetz, who is a Republican, which called on the White House to release documents, this is the Biden regime, to release documents related to the war in Ukraine. It passed by a voice vote with a debate resolution divided along party lines. The bill would urge President Joe Biden to grant lawmakers access to all documents indicating any plans for future or current military assistance to Ukraine. And basically what they wanted to do was it says, since Russia invaded its neighbor 14 months ago, again, why did they do that? They did that because the government in Kiev was shelling the people in eastern Ukraine, and they were preparing an ethnic cleansing operation. And it was because of that the people in those areas, appealed desperately to Russia to please, protect them. That's what happened. But of course, they don't tell you that. It's Russia invaded unprovoked. That's what they tell you. This is just another example of this. So it says that according to the Kiel Institute for World Economy, Washington has provided, this is as of April 2023, $80 billion in military and financial aid throughout the conflict. The resolution was limited to Republicans. It passed a voice vote and set for a full committee vote on Friday. Several Democrats attacked the legislation, blasting the measure as divisive and ill-advised. And it's a partisan ploy in the height of legislative irresponsibility that jeopardizes the national security of the United States. It's like Ukraine is a country that is not part of NATO. It is not anywhere near the United States. It is a neighbor to Russia. The United States wants to take over Ukraine to place missiles and put an army there that is meant ultimately to attack Russia. And yet she says that Ukraine it jeopardizes the national security of the United States, when in fact Ukraine was jeopardizing the national security of Russia. So this is how they invert things, another example of how they invert reality. And she said that the Congress has remained resolutely bipartisan for Ukraine as it fights against Russian aggression. And what she was saying was that it says it plays directly into Putin's hands by seeking to force the disclosure of all present and future military plans. Well, it's not what it does. What it does is it shows where the money's going. And because the Democrats oppose that measure, and the Republicans as well, primarily, it was the Democrats. But the bottom line is this bill to audit and track where the money's going. Can you imagine giving a country $80 billion and not wanting to have accountability of that money? Where is it going? How is it being used? We don't know, and we don't care. Amazing. So this is another article. This is from the New York Post. Again, this is July of 2023, updated for September. And it says, Senate Democrats banded together Wednesday to oppose the creation of a new office to audit U.S. military assistance for Ukraine as part of a provision in the annual defense spending bill. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, where the U.S. government gives tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine, and here we are in 2025, and they're shocked that that there's been corruption going on. Well, maybe if they had been tracking this money, where it was going, and if they were watching the money trail, where it was going from the first step when it first got to Ukraine, and who had control of that money, where did it go, where did it go, where did the money to buy the weapons go, where did the weapons go once they were bought, then we wouldn't have had this situation. But that's not how things work in Washington. They didn't want to know because it's part of the grift. There was just a report, John Helmer, who was a longstanding journalist living in Russia, and he pointed out that the weapons companies are making out like bandits with all the expenditures on weapons, and they want this war to continue because it's great for the weapons companies, and yet Ukraine is being decimated as a country, and this is the shocking part. It's not that Ukraine is corrupt; it's that the West is using Ukraine in order to enrich the weapons companies and the politicians who are also getting bribes off of this and getting takes from it. That is the real corruption going on, and yet they're passing off the blame to Ukraine. Well, I want to go on here. There's another article here, and again, to point out that this is an article that is 10 years old, and it's called Welcome to Ukraine, the Most Corrupt Nation in Europe. So you can see this is a country that has had a reputation for a long, long time of being extremely corrupt. And they give this article is about what happened it says, while the conflict with Russia heats up in the east, life for most Ukrainian is marred by corruption so endemic that even hospitals appear to be infected. Can anyone clean the country up? It's kind of a nice play on words. And what he does is he talks about the fact that the Soviet Union built this hospital in 1968, and it was used primarily for treating cancer. And because of the endemic corruption throughout the Ukrainian society, they just don't have the money to give people proper care. And because of that, if you have cancer, you're going to die unless you bribe a doctor to give you treatment. So this is the kind of this is the direct effect that this one tiny corner has had of the corruption going on in Ukraine. But the really big money has been made with the defense establishment in Ukraine. So, for example, I guess I think it might have been a couple of years ago, or at least a year ago, the Secretary of Defense of Ukraine, whose name I think was Reznikov, was asked to move on, to resign, because his corruption and his embezzlement was so blatant that they just really couldn't handle it. There was another story. I don't have a link to it, where President Zelensky was called in by the White House and said, can you kind of tone it down a little bit? I mean, it's so flagrant that we really can't. It's embarrassing, so please don't do that. But this was, they kind of shove it under the rug the way they shove under the rug with this legislation that Congress refused to pass to track things. So anyway, he talked about the fact that this article talks about the fact that it says half of Ukraine's men and a fifth of its women smoke. The national diet is heavy with animal fat. The national drink is vodka. Radiation from the Chernobyl disaster spread thyroid cancers throughout the 1980s, increasing incidence among children tenfold. There are few family doctors, which means that breast, prostate, and bowel tumors often go undetected for months. Survival rates for these cancers are among the lowest in Europe. So this is an example of what happens when you have a country that has been completely corrupted. Okay, moving on here. There's an article that I just came across. Now this is something that appeared in a Telegram channel, and this is a channel inside of Ukraine, it's not like Ukraine is monolithic in its support for this war against Russia. In fact, there's significant dissidence against this war and against the government. The government of Ukraine is the product of a U.S. coup, and many people in Ukraine are ethnic Russian. They favor Russia. They can see what's going on. And so as a result, if you go through some of the Telegram channels, you can find channels that are there. These are basically the resistance. And because Telegram has some degree of anonymity, if you're careful in how you use it, the likelihood of your being able to pass information on without being caught is it's reasonably high. So this is an article that just came about. And it turns out that a high-ranking government official, I think the guy's name is Umerov, and I think he is also associated with the Defense Department in Ukraine. And it says that Umerov is currently in the United States, so he left Ukraine, and he's now in the United States, and he's negotiating with the U.S. authorities regarding his cases with NABU and SAP, that is these two corruption investigative and prosecution agencies. And he says the only way to negotiate there is to make a deal with an investigation and betray everyone here. So he says it's no secret that this fellow Umerov has American citizenship, property in the USA, and his entire family lives there. The only thing connecting him to Ukraine is the charisma of Volodymyr Zelensky. This kind of confession was recorded by and I'll kind of clean up the language on this, but it was recorded by a Verkhovna Rada, that is the equivalent of Congress in Ukraine, an official of that entity. Essentially, it's the Ukrainian Congress. And it says, this woman had started out defending the Russian language and was clearly, it says, and was clearly knocked out in Sevastopol in spring 2014 with calls for country unity. So she apparently had been on the side of having unity and not having this war against the eastern Ukraine early on. But then she switched sides and was involved in the Odessa Trade Union's house massacre in May 2nd of 2014. And that was when the civil war really broke out, when the people in the eastern Ukraine understood that they were being directly targeted for genocide by the Kiev regime, because the Kiev regime is intensely Russophobic. So what this person is saying is that the henchmen of the expired Nakronid, which he's referring to, that's a nickname for Vladimir Zelensky, he says they are not to be envied now because they themselves got caught red-handed. So the whole structure of the Ukrainian government is just loaded with people who are embezzling money and doing all kinds of deals and enriching themselves with tens of millions or even billions of dollars. And they got caught because for some reason the United States has decided that this is becoming too obvious, too embarrassing, and they have to deal with it. And it says the eternal rule of true Ukrainianness is revealed. To betray in time is not a disgrace, but a gift of foresight. And he says he talks about Umerov, and he says he of course he is a son of a bitch, but let's see how much he will become a son of a bitch for the big white gentleman from the State Department. Simply having a passport and property in the U.S., bought again with money stolen from the United States, guarantees nothing. He cites another person who had money and property, and how did that end? So most likely the case will depend on the flexibility of Mr. Umerov's lumbar spine, but he's used to it. So the point is that these people have no principles, and they'll do whatever they can to either get the money or betray their partners in crime. It doesn't matter. So he says, if the accomplices decide to blame everything on the Fuhrer, that is Zelensky, his situation may be very bad. Maybe the Russian dagger, that is a missile, will fly into his residence, and 5 control shots to the back of the neck just to be sure. So what he's saying here is that the Ukrainian establishment is so completely corrupt from top to bottom that even if you maneuver yourself to benefit from it, you're probably going to have to betray somebody somewhere along the line. Now, there's a related story where 2 other associates of Zelensky, Zuckerman and Mindrich, I think is their names. They were, again, close associates of Zelensky, and their residences were raided, but they were tipped off and they ended up in Israel, because Israel is, if you're Jewish and you claim asylum, even if you committed a crime, they probably won't extradite you. So this is what is going on in Ukraine, and the point that I'm making here is that the U.S. government has this habit of deflection, where they'll create a situation, because the U.S. government itself is completely corrupt from top to bottom. These people, they're on the take from lobbyists, from the Jewish lobby, from the Ukrainian lobby, and other lobbies, not to mention Big Pharma, the defense industry, and this all shows up in the data, which is that polls from Princeton University say that the laws that are created in the United States are not done for the benefit of the 99% of the people. They're done for the benefit of the 1%. So the U.S. government can point to, oh, Ukraine is really, really corrupt. No, they are corrupt. Our government is corrupt. So that's the point that I want to make in this discussion. And but you see, is getting back to my original point, the fact that the media itself is so controlled in this situation, where if you say the right thing, you'll get paid, like, who is it, Rachel Maddow gets paid, I don't know, $500,000 or whatever it is for every episode that she puts on, or at least that was true in the past. And on the other hand, if you're a Phil Donahue and you oppose a war that the U.S. government decides it wants to foment, you lose your job. This is corruption at the very highest level, and involves the media as a key component of this whole system. So why am I here? I'm just this little guy who's, I bother to pay attention to these things. I'm trying to bring these issues to your attention as well. So that's basically what I have to say here, and I hope you'll support my channel by, subscribing, or certainly you can share my videos with people, do a like or a comment. That's all great. If you can financially help out, that would be wonderful. You can, take a subscription in Substack, or send money through my PayPal address, or you can buy a T-shirt. Presently, I'm using Amazon for what I call my information billboard T-shirts, which I've just ordered some of these T-shirts, and I'm going to start wearing them so that you can see, the information that I have. And it's really pretty tame, actually. I'm not being overly political in those. I'm just trying to get people to start talking with each other. For example, I have this one T-shirt that says "Question Everything." It has the face of a Buddha, and it says "Question Everything" because, one of the Buddha's most important sermons that he gave was to the Kalama people, and the Kalama people went to him and they said, this guru came to our village and he was telling us the truth as he saw it, and then this other guy came to our village and he said, no, that person doesn't know what he's talking about. So we're confused. What do you think? And of course, If the Buddha were someone other than the Buddha, he would have said, "Well, of course, I'm the authority. You should listen to me. Don't listen to those other guys." That's not what he said. He said you should investigate for yourself, find out what's true, find out what is beneficial, and follow that. Don't just believe authorities or rumors or whatever people have told you, or the truth that's been passed on for decades, like the United States is the freedom and democracy beacon of the world. You have to do your research and find out what's really going on. So that's one of my T-shirts is question everything. I have another T-shirt that says be kind. Another T-shirt says, may you attain enlightenment. So I hope you will you'll help you'll give me some idea that my efforts are showing some degree of efficacy here, that they're having some positive effect. So thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you soon.